"You're too much for a classy event like this," my mother said, her voice dripping with the same polished disdain she'd used my entire life. She stood in my kitchen, perfectly composed in her cream cashmere coat, holding a cup of coffee she hadn't touched. "Sophia's wedding will be elegant, refined, and intimate. We can't risk disruptions." For a moment, I thought I'd misheard her. The ticking of the wall clock grew louder, drowning out the words I didn't want to process. I set my own mug down slowly, my hands trembling just slightly. "Disruptions," I repeated, my voice flat. She looked away as if embarrassed for me. "You know how you can be, Claire. You get emotional. People misunderstand. It's better this way." All I could do was laugh soft and humorless. "Better for who?" Mom's lips tightened. "This isn't personal. Sophia just wants a peaceful, elegant ceremony. It's going to be very high profile. A vineyard in Napa, a magazine feature. Everything needs to be perfect." "Perfect," I echoed the word, tasting bitter. My mother had built her life around perfection, her hair, her home, her family's image. And I'd always been the flaw in the portrait. "I wish you all the best," I said finally. My tone was even, my expression calm, but inside I could feel something break. She hesitated, clearly expecting tears or protest. When I gave her nothing, she sighed and smoothed her coat. "I'm glad you're being mature about this," she said. "Sophia will appreciate your understanding." The door closed behind her with a soft click that felt louder than it should have. I stood there for a long time, staring at the empty space where she'd been. Then I laughed again, a small, hollow sound that caught in my throat. The word mature echoed in my mind like an insult. Maturity in my family meant silence. It meant swallowing the truth for the sake of appearances. I turned toward the window. Seattle's morning light was pale and cold, bouncing off the glass buildings across the street. My reflection looked ghost-like small against the skyline. They really did it. They planned everything, booked flights, printed invitations, posed for engagement photos, and never once thought to include me. The familiar ache bloomed in my chest. It wasn't just about the wedding. It was about every Thanksgiving where my opinions were too loud. Every Christmas where I defended someone and became the problem. I thought back to last year's dinner when my uncle made a joke about lazy millennials, and I'd asked him what decade he thought he was living in. My mother's glare across the table had been enough to freeze the room. "You don't have to make everything political," she'd hissed later. Or the time I defended my cousin who was going through a divorce. Everyone else called her selfish. I called her brave. And somehow that had made me dramatic. Maybe I was dramatic. Maybe caring too much was a crime in this family. I walked over to my phone still on the counter and opened Instagram. The first post that popped up was my sister's Sophia Mitchell, soon to be Mrs. Ethan Langford. Her feed was immaculate, filtered sunsets, champagne glasses, clinking a diamond ring catching the light. The caption read, "1 week until forever. Number Sophia and Ethan forever. Number Napa Valley dream." There she was, glowing in a lace gown during her bridal fitting, surrounded by our mother and Aunt Diane. Their smiles were effortless. Mine was conspicuously absent. I scrolled through the comments. "So elegant. You're the definition of perfection. Sophia can't wait to see photos from the wedding of the year. The wedding of the year." I put my phone down and leaned back against the counter, staring at the ceiling. For a long time I had tried to be the kind of daughter my mother wanted: quiet, agreeable, digestible. But every time I spoke the truth, every time I showed emotion, she called it too much. Maybe she was right. Maybe I was too much for them. But that didn't mean I was wrong. The silence in my apartment felt heavy, pressing against me from all sides. I thought about calling someone, anyone, but there was no one in my family who'd understand. They were all packing their gowns and tuxedos, preparing to sip champagne beneath fairy lights in California, pretending their perfect family was complete. I poured the untouched coffee down the sink and watched it swirl away. Outside, a drizzle began to fall, the kind Seattle was famous for: soft, constant, almost cleansing. I wrapped my sweater tighter and sank onto the couch. The ache in my chest shifted into something else, not anger. Not yet. But something sharper. A flicker of defiance. They thought I'd fall apart. They thought I'd beg to be included to prove I could behave. But what if I didn't? What if instead of fighting for a seat at their perfect table, I built my own? My phone buzzed a notification from Sophia's story. I almost ignored it, but curiosity won. A video played Sophia laughing with bridesmaids as they toasted mimosas in matching silk robes. My mother in the background beaming. The caption, "So blessed. Can't wait to celebrate with everyone who means the world to me." Everyone. The word hit harder than I expected. I closed the app and stared at the blank home screen. Then, slowly, deliberately, I opened my notes app and typed, "They wanted a drama-free wedding. Maybe they'll get more attention than they ever bargained for." I didn't know yet what that meant. Not exactly. But for the first time all morning, the air didn't feel so heavy. I stood, walked to the window, and looked out at the city. Again, the cranes moving over half-built towers, the buses gliding through puddles, people living lives that didn't have to look perfect to be real. My reflection stared back at me, eyes steadier than before. Maybe being too much wasn't a flaw. Maybe it was a spark, and maybe just maybe it was time to let it burn. The next morning, the light that crept into my apartment felt colder than usual. I stayed in bed longer than I should have, staring at the ceiling, trying to decide whether I felt angry, sad, or simply hollow. Outside, Seattle's drizzle tapped a rhythm against my window, as if reminding me the world was still turning weddings or not. When I finally got up, I made coffee and checked my phone. My family group chat was silent. No text from my mother, no random love you from Sophia, like she sometimes sent after posting a big life update. Just quiet. The kind that doesn't comfort you but makes your stomach twist because you know it's intentional. I scrolled through Instagram out of habit, and of course Sophia's face was the first thing I saw. She was glowing in a bridal robe, her caption oozing excitement. "Can't believe the big day is almost here, feeling so blessed. Number Sophia and Ethan forever." The picture was perfect, too perfect. The kind of perfection that screamed this isn't real happiness, it's PR. I set my phone down, exhaled slowly, and tried to remember when perfect had started to feel like a threat. I'd been the black sheep for as long as I could remember. Even as a kid, I was the one who asked too many questions, laughed too loud, and pointed out when something felt wrong. Mom used to smile and say, "Claire, you're so passionate," but as I got older, passion turned into attitude. When I was 15, she told me at a dinner party to tone it down after I called out one of Dad's clients for mocking a waitress. I remember how her nails dug into my arm under the table, her smile frozen in place for the guests. "Ladies don't start debates over dessert," she whispered. At 17, I wrote an article for our school paper criticizing a charity event that spent more on decorations than the cause itself. The principal called my mom. She was furious. "You embarrass me," she'd said. "People know who you are. What must they think of us now?" By college, we barely spoke about anything real. She wanted me to study finance to secure a future, but I chose communications. She called it a phase, as if authenticity were a disease I'd grow out of. Dad tried to keep peace between us, but he was quieter, one of those men who believed silence was love. My sister Sophia filled the house with her sweetness, her manners, her talent for saying the right thing at the right time. She was beautiful, polite, and predictable. The golden child. I wasn't jealous of her, not exactly, but I learned early that her existence made my rebellion look sharper. When she was praised for grace, I was warned about intensity. When she was told she'd make a lovely wife someday, I was told I'd make a good lawyer because I never knew when to shut up. Last Thanksgiving had been the breaking point. We were all gathered around the table, roast turkey wine glasses, fake laughter, echoing through the dining room. My uncle made a joke about immigrants taking real Americans' jobs. The room laughed politely. I didn't. "That's not funny," I said. "It's racist." The silence that followed was heavy. My mother's eyes cut across the table like daggers. "Claire," she hissed through a smile, It's Thanksgiving. Let's not start. Start what I said, my voice trembling but steady. Decency. That night she told me I had ruined the holiday. Sophia tried to smooth things over, whispering, "You know how Mom is, just let it go." But I couldn't let it go, and since then, we hadn't been the same. Standing now in my kitchen months later, I realized that conversation had been the start of my quiet exile. The wedding was just the final stamp on a decision they'd made long ago. I didn't fit the family brand. At work, things were different. My small marketing firm downtown felt like a haven of real conversations and creative chaos. My boss Kyle was younger than my mom by 20 years, but treated me like an equal. I handled social media campaigns, crafting stories that felt human, something most brands had no clue how to do. When I talked about authentic connection, clients actually listened. The irony wasn't lost on me. The woman who was too much for her own family was paid to make strangers feel something real. It was late afternoon when my phone buzzed with a call from Chloe. Her name lit up the screen, and I smiled instinctively. "Hey, stranger," she chirped. "Still alive, or did your family finally drive you into the woods?" I laughed softly. "Depends which day you're asking about," she groaned. "Ugh. You sound like you're drowning in decaf and self-restraint." What happened? So I told her. Every word. The kitchen conversation, the uninvited revelation, the silence that followed. Chloe listened, without interrupting something I loved about her. When I finished, there was a beat of quiet before she said, "They uninvited you from your sister's wedding because you have opinions, Jesus Claire. You're not dramatic. They're allergic to truth." I chuckled. You should have seen Mom's face. Like she was doing me a favor, saving the family from a PR crisis. "Maybe it's time you stop trying to fit into their narrative," Chloe said. "Write your own story." "Yeah, easier said than done." "Well," she continued, "if you're free next weekend, you can help me write someone else's." I just booked a last-minute wedding in Aspen Mountains. Small crowd, totally gorgeous. The couple wants everything to feel raw and emotional. No filters, no fake smiles. You'd love it. "A wedding," I said dryly. "Because I definitely want to spend the day of my sister's wedding at another wedding." "Think about it. You'd be my assistant. You know social media better than anyone, and I could use someone who gets storytelling. Plus, I think you need a change of scenery." Her tone softened. "Claire, you've spent years shrinking yourself so they wouldn't call you dramatic. Maybe it's time you stop apologizing for feeling deeply." I didn't answer right away. Outside, the sky had turned gray-blue, the kind that makes you want to stay in your thoughts too long. I stared at the raindrops sliding down the window and said quietly, "You might be right." Chloe laughed. "Of course I am. Call me tomorrow. I'll send you the details." After we hung up, I sat at my desk for a while, the sound of rain steady against the glass. I opened my work laptop and pulled up a project I'd been meaning to finish, but my eyes kept drifting to the folder labeled personal. Inside were old photos, family vacations, birthdays, moments that now felt like someone else's life. In one, I was 10 wearing mismatched socks and holding a frog. Sophia was next to me in a perfect dress, grimacing. Mom was behind us, smiling only for the camera. I closed the folder. Later that evening, I decided to walk around Green Lake. The air was crisp, the water reflecting soft city lights. Couples held hands, dogs chased sticks, joggers passed me in rhythmic patterns. Life went on effortlessly normal. As I circled the lake, I thought about Chloe's words. Maybe shrinking myself hadn't protected me, it had erased me. Maybe the version of me they couldn't handle was the version the world needed to see. When I got home, I stood by the window watching the drizzle turn into fog. For once, I didn't feel like crying. I felt something steadier, determined. I whispered to myself, "You can't control how others see you, but you can control what story you tell about yourself." My phone buzzed just as I turned off the light. A message from Chloe: "Call me tomorrow. I have an idea you're going to love." I smiled in the dark, that faint electric hum of curiosity sparking in my chest. Maybe it wasn't the end of something after all. Maybe it was just the start of a better story, one I'd finally get to tell my way. It was strange how silence could feel louder than noise. 3 days had passed since my mother's visit, and not a single word from anyone in the family. No calls, no texts, no how are you messages that pretended to care. The quiet wasn't peaceful, it was deliberate. It screamed of boundaries I hadn't agreed to. I sat at my desk with my coffee growing cold beside me, eyes fixed on my calendar. Sophia's wedding was 1 week away. I imagined the flurry of fittings and rehearsals, the champagne toasts, and the endless perfect family photos. Every seat would be filled, every detail planned, except me. Part of me wondered if anyone there would notice my absence. Would they glance at the space I should have occupied and think, maybe we went too far? Or would they just raise their glasses and tell each other how wonderful it all looked? When I finally gave in and opened Instagram, my sister's face filled the screen immediately. A countdown post. 7 days to forever. She stood in front of a vineyard draped in gold light, a glass of champagne in hand, captioned, "Feeling blessed to celebrate with everyone I love most." Everyone. The word hit like a bruise. Her followers were gushing over it. What a dream! Such elegance, the perfect bride. Even my mother commented, proud beyond words. I zoomed in on the photo, studying every flawless detail. The curls pinned just right. The diamond sparkle, the backdrop designed to make everyone envy her life. It was everything my family worshipped: curated happiness, surface-level grace. I locked my phone and exhaled hard. They didn't forget me, I muttered. They erased me. When the phone rang, I flinched. The screen lit up with a name I hadn't seen in months, Aunt Diane. I almost let it go to voicemail, but curiosity got the better of me. Claire, sweetheart. Her tone was syrupy sweet, the kind that always came before a backhanded comment. I just wanted to check in, make sure there are no hard feelings about the wedding situation. The situation, I repeated. You mean the part where everyone was invited except me? Oh, honey, she said with a pitying sigh. It's not personal. You know how your mother can be. She just wants everything to go smoothly. This is Sophia's special day, and well, sometimes you have a way of bringing tension into family events. Tension, I said flatly. Yes. You know, those big conversations about politics, social issues, feelings. People can be sensitive. I think the word you're looking for is honest, I said. I bring honesty to family events. Her laugh was high and nervous. Now, don't get defensive. We just want a calm, beautiful celebration. Maybe this will be a good learning experience for you about flexibility and not making things about yourself. I froze, letting the words sink in. There it was again, the twisted logic that somehow my pain, my exclusion, was a lesson in humility. Interesting lesson, I said quietly, considering I wasn't the one who made the guest list. She cleared her throat. Anyway, we'll be thinking of you, dear. Try to enjoy your weekend. The call ended with a soft click, leaving me staring at my reflection in the black screen. For a long moment I said nothing. Then I laughed, a low, bitter sound. The kind that doesn't feel funny but keeps you from screaming. By the time evening came, I was half buried in work emails when someone knocked on my door. It was Chloe, holding 2 coffees and wearing that "don't argue with me" grin. I come bearing caffeine and emotional rescue, she said, stepping inside. You look like a ghost. I feel like one. She handed me a cup, plopped down on the couch, and kicked off her boots. Okay. Tell me what's going on. So I told her about the call, about the Instagram post, about the deafening silence of a family who'd made peace with pretending I didn't exist. By the time I finished, Chloe was pacing. I can't believe this. They actually think you're the problem. They always have, I said. They call it managing expectations. What it really means is that my existence is inconvenient. Chloe shook her head. You've been their scapegoat since high school. I remember that Christmas party when you said Aunt Diane's boyfriend was creeping on you and everyone acted like you imagined it. I winced. Yeah, that was fun. She stopped pacing and looked at me serious now. Listen, you deserve better, and maybe, just maybe, life's trying to show you that. I raised an eyebrow. Meaning Chloe grinned, pulling her phone from her coat pocket. Meaning, I got an incredible gig, and I want you to come with me. Another wedding, I guessed, she nodded. Aspen, Mountain Lodge, small guest list, breathtaking scenery. The couple's obsessed with authenticity. They don't want a show, they want something that feels real. I blinked. You're serious. Completely. They even asked for social media content during the ceremony, live storytelling, emotional coverage, all that good stuff. You'd be perfect. You're not just good at content, you make people feel. I don't know anything about wedding photography, I protested. You don't have to. You understand people. That's what they need. I hesitated. The idea of spending my sister's wedding weekend surrounded by love and vows and happy families sounded like emotional torture. But the way Chloe described it, authentic, real, unfiltered, made something inside me flicker. Come on, she said softly. You need to get out of your own head. Do something that reminds you who you are. I took a long sip of coffee, staring out the window where raindrops streaked the glass. It's the same day as Sophia's wedding, isn't it? Saturday at 2? Yeah. I let out a breath. While they're busy proving how perfect they are, I could be helping two strangers create something honest. Chloe's grin widened. Now you're thinking like me, I smirked. That's terrifying, she laughed, tossing a pillow at me. You'll thank me later. The room grew quiet for a moment. Then, more softly, she said, Claire, you've been made to feel like being emotional is a flaw. But maybe it's your superpower. People crave what you have the courage to feel deeply. Her words hit somewhere tender. I stared at her for a moment, unsure what to say. You really think so? I know so. The decision came quietly, like an inhale after a long hold. Okay, I said finally. Let's do it. I'll help. Chloe let out a squeal, jumping from the couch. Yes, this is going to be incredible. I'll handle the logistics, you handle the storytelling. We'll make something that feels real. Her excitement was contagious. For the first time in weeks, I felt that old creative spark, that little pulse of purpose that used to drive me before I spent so much time defending my right to exist. After Chloe left, I sat at my desk again, but this time I wasn't doom-scrolling. I opened a blank document and typed a heading: Project Aspen. Capturing authenticity. Underneath, I started brainstorming ideas: natural light, candid laughter, human moments. Halfway through, I paused and opened Instagram again, not to stalk my family this time, but to study them. The poses, the filters, the rehearsed captions, the algorithm of artificial happiness. I wasn't jealous anymore. I was curious. By midnight, I had a rough outline for a campaign that wasn't about brands or clients. It was about emotion. Real emotion. When I finally closed my laptop, a strange calm settled over me. I realized that for the first time I wasn't angry. I wasn't trying to prove a point. I just wanted to create something meaningful. The next morning I woke early. The sky was pale silver, the city still wrapped in fog. I poured coffee, opened my phone, and reread Chloe's message from the night before. They loved the idea. You're officially part of the team. I smiled, whispering to myself. Let's make something real, something beautiful, no filters, no lies. It felt like more than a work assignment. It felt like reclaiming something I'd lost the right to exist exactly as I was. And as the rain started again outside my window, I realized something else. While my family was preparing for the wedding of the year, I was preparing for something far rarer, one that might just set me free. The morning light stretched across my apartment like a quiet promise. I sat at the kitchen table, coffee steaming beside my laptop, rereading the email from Chloe for what must have been the 5th time. Aspen Lodge confirmed, it said. They're thrilled about having you on board. We leave Friday morning. For the first time in months, I wasn't waiting for someone to invite me somewhere. I was building something of my own. I printed the itinerary, scribbled notes in the margins about camera angles and timing, and felt an unfamiliar mix of nerves and excitement. It was terrifying, yes, but in a good way. The kind of fear that meant you were stepping into something new instead of running from the old. When I opened Instagram out of habit, Sophia's face filled the screen again. This time, she was in Napa, smiling beside Ethan with a glass of wine surrounded by bridesmaids in matching silk dresses. The caption read, "Counting down the days. Thank you to our amazing team for making this dream come true." The dream. I watched the short clip twice. Everything looked flawless. The vineyard, the string lights, the perfect angle of her laughter. I could almost hear my mother's voice in the background. "Sophia has such grace. She's everything a Mitchell woman should be." I locked the phone and leaned back in my chair. "At least I know exactly where I don't belong," I murmured. That afternoon I met Chloe at our usual cafe in Capitol Hill. She was already there, sitting by the window with her laptop open and a notebook filled with scribbles and color-coded sticky notes. "You're late," she teased as I slid into the seat across from her. "I brought muffins," I said, setting down the paper bag. "Then all is forgiven." She grinned and flipped her notebook around. "Okay, so here's what I'm thinking. The couple Lily and Marcus want their wedding to feel intimate and organic. They met volunteering in Colorado after that wildfire 2 years ago, so they're sentimental about nature. They don't care about trends, they want connection." Her enthusiasm was contagious. I leaned over the notebook, scanning her rough layout. "I like that. Real people, real emotion. Not curated, not posed." "Exactly," Chloe said, tapping her pen. "I'll handle the main shot, ceremony portraits, the standard stuff. You focus on the moments in between. The laughter, the tears, the stories." I pulled my laptop from my bag and opened a blank page. "We should have a content flow ready by Thursday. I'll manage hashtags, captions, and short clips for reels." Chloe nodded. "I knew you'd say that. You're the only person I know who actually uses spreadsheets for feelings." I smirked. "Someone has to bring structure to your chaos." She took a sip of her latte, watching me carefully. "You seem lighter," she said. "Different." I shrugged. "Maybe I'm finally tired of apologizing for being myself." "That's the Claire I like," she said. "The world needs more of her." We spent the next 2 hours brainstorming themes. Words like authentic, unfiltered, and real love filled the margins of our notes. The concept began to take shape: real love, Aspen, authenticity over aesthetics. It wasn't just a wedding, it was a story about choosing meaning over performance. Somewhere between the 3rd cup of coffee and the 5th round of ideas, I told Chloe what my mother had said. "You're too much for a classy event." Chloe leaned back, her expression darkening. "You know what that really means. You make people feel things they don't want to feel. That's not too much, that's powerful." I stared at her, the words sinking deeper than I expected. "Maybe," I said softly, "but it still hurts." She reached across the table, touching my hand. "Then let the work heal it." I smiled, and for the first time it felt genuine. Later that evening, I sat on my couch with my laptop researching the Aspen Lodge venue. Photos of the mountain peaks, the snow-dusted pines, and the cozy wooden cabins filled my screen. It looked like a place where stories came alive, where love didn't need chandeliers or champagne towers to matter. As I read through travel blogs and scrolled past images of couples wrapped in blankets under the stars, an idea began forming in my mind. What if the entire wedding coverage wasn't just pretty pictures, but a visual narrative about truth, about love that didn't hide behind filters? I started typing ideas. Theme: real love is imperfect. Emotion is greater than appearance. Truth is greater than curation. Halfway through writing, I stopped and stared at the words. They weren't just notes for a project. They were a manifesto. My manifesto. When the phone rang, I nearly jumped. It was Chloe again, her voice crackling through the line. "You're not going to believe this," she said breathlessly. "Lily and Marcus just approved the concept. They love it. They said, and I quote, 'We want Claire to do whatever she feels inspired to do.'" I laughed, leaning back against the couch. Didn't they just meet me through a 5-minute introduction? Yeah, but apparently you sound like someone who gets it. Gets what love actually looks like. I sat there smiling into the darkness of my apartment. Tell them I'll do my best. You always do, she said, then hung up. The next day I threw myself into preparation mode. My apartment transformed into a mini command center, lists, batteries, chargers, memory cards, mood boards taped to the walls. Between meetings at work, I edited captions and drafted posting templates. My boss noticed. You look happy, Kyle said during our morning briefing. Busy, I corrected. But I couldn't help the small smile. The good kind. That night, as I was packing equipment, my phone buzzed again, Sophia's latest video update. I almost ignored it, but curiosity got the better of me. The clip opened with a slow pan across an extravagant dining hall, crystal chandeliers, white roses everywhere. My mother's voice echoed faintly, boasting to someone about the imported linens. Then the camera focused on Sophia twirling in her designer gown, radiant and rehearsed. Her caption read, "Perfection in progress. Number Napa Dream Wedding." I stared at it for a moment, then closed the app. Perfection. Progress. 2 words that had nothing to do with love. I turned back to my laptop and opened the folder labeled Aspen Story. The first draft of my content plan glowed on the screen. I typed a new line beneath the title, "While They Chase Perfection, I'll Chase Truth." The words sent a small thrill through me. At midnight, Chloe texted, "Packing, check, you ready?" "Almost," I replied, just finalizing captions. "Only you would pack words before close," she wrote back, followed by 3 laughing emojis. I smiled, shaking my head. But she wasn't wrong. Before shutting down for the night, I checked Sophia's account one last time. Her latest story showed her and my mother clinking champagne glasses with the caption, "3 days until forever." I whispered to the empty room, "Let's see whose forever lasts longer." Friday morning came with soft rain and nervous energy. Chloe arrived in her SUV trunk, packed with gear, coffee in hand. "Ready to hit the road?" she asked, grinning. "More than ready," I said. As we pulled onto the highway, Seattle faded in the rearview mirror, replaced by winding mountain roads and endless sky. The air grew thinner, fresher, like a promise of something new. Halfway through the drive, Chloe turned the radio down. "You know, Claire," she said, "I think this might be more than just another wedding job for you." I looked out at the snowy peaks in the distance. "Yeah," I said quietly. "I think so too." By the time the sun set, we'd reached the edge of Aspen. The mountains glowed pink against the fading sky, the world so still it felt like holding its breath. Chloe parked the car and turned to me, her smile soft but certain. "Let's make something beautiful." I nodded, heart steady. "Let's make it real." And somewhere deep down, I knew this wasn't just about a wedding anymore. It was about reclaiming the parts of myself that I'd been told were too much. This time, my story wouldn't be curated for someone else's comfort. It would be honest. It would be mine. The morning air in Seattle felt different that week. Lighter somehow. I woke before my alarm, the kind of early where the world is still soft and quiet. My apartment was bathed in pale gray light, the kind that made everything look honest. I poured myself a cup of coffee and glanced at the suitcase by the door. It wasn't just luggage. It was the first step towards something that felt like freedom. I checked my calendar again. Saturday, Sophia's wedding day. Or rather, the day I was supposed to sit at home pretending not to care. Instead, I'd be in the Rockies, surrounded by snow and sincerity, capturing a story that actually meant something. As I sipped my coffee, my voicemail icon blinked. One new message. I pressed play, expecting some random client, but it was my mother's voice. "Claire," she began, her tone controlled but sharp around the edges. "I hope you're not planning to do anything dramatic that weekend. Just keep things calm. For once." I laughed out loud, the sound bouncing off the walls. She still thought the worst thing I could do was feel too much. When the message ended, I deleted it without replaying. The silence afterward felt like peace. Scrolling through social media, I saw the same endless parade of perfection. Sophia and Ethan posing under chandeliers, my mother smiling in tailored satin captions, dripping with words like grace and legacy. Relatives I barely spoke to were commenting heart emojis, and so proud of this family. One comment from a cousin I hadn't seen in years read, "Claire must be thrilled for her sister." I almost replied define thrilled, but instead I set the phone down and walked to my closet. There, folded neatly on a hanger, was the light blue dress I'd bought months ago, the one I'd imagined wearing to Sophia's wedding. I touched the fabric briefly, then placed it back. Some outfits weren't meant for pretending anymore. Packing for Aspen felt different from any other trip I'd taken. Each item I folded felt like a choice, not an obligation. Camera batteries, journal, a wool scarf, sneakers for walking through snow. For the first time in years, I wasn't packing guilt or resentment, just curiosity. By noon, I was out the door to meet Chloe at our favorite cafe by Green Lake. She waved when she saw me, a wide grin breaking across her face. "You look like someone who finally slept for once," she said. "I did," I replied. "I think deleting my family's numbers from speed dial is great for the complexion," Chloe snorted. "You joke, but that's probably true." She slid her laptop across the table toward me. "All right, logistics time. We leave Friday morning, drive straight to Aspen. The ceremony's Saturday at 2. The couple wants social coverage in real time, plus behind-the-scenes reels." I scanned the notes, impressed as always by how Chloe could make chaos look organized. "You handle photos, I handle narrative. Raw, real, romantic," I said, echoing our mantra from last week. "Exactly," she said, sipping her latte. "This wedding is going to change everything for us. I can feel it." I wanted to believe her. As we packed up, Chloe gave me a long look. "You sure you're okay? It's a lot being surrounded by love when you're the family disappointment." I finished for her with a smirk. "I was going to say when you're healing, but sure, I'll be fine," I said. "If anything, it'll be poetic." She grinned. "That's my girl, turning pain into art." On the walk home, my phone buzzed again. A text from Sophia. I stopped on the sidewalk, staring at the name for a long time before opening it. "Hey, I hope you're not upset about the wedding. It's nothing personal. Mom thought you might make things awkward. No apology, just justification dressed as kindness." I typed and deleted a dozen responses before settling on 3 words. "Thanks for letting me know." I turned my phone off and slipped it into my pocket. The message didn't sting like I expected. If anything, it clarified something. She wasn't the villain of my story, she was just a mirror reflecting who I used to be. Someone desperate to please everyone. That night, I finished packing while the rain whispered against the windows. The city outside glowed with headlights, a blur of motion and noise. Inside, everything was still. I placed my camera bag on top of the suitcase, zipped it shut, and whispered to the empty room, "You don't need to be in their pictures to have a story worth telling." Friday morning came with the hum of tires on wet pavement. Chloe's SUV waited outside my building trunk, open music playing low. She leaned out the window, grinning. "Hop in, Thelma. We've got mountains to find." The drive stretched across endless highways and winding passes, rain giving way to snow as we climbed higher. The world outside looked untouched, like a painting, white peaks, dark evergreens, rivers half frozen in place. For the first few hours, we talked about work, music, and ridiculous wedding stories from Chloe's past gigs. Then somewhere past the Oregon border, she turned the volume down. "Can I tell you something?" "Of course." "My first wedding job," she said, eyes on the road. "The bride told me I was too emotional. I was 22, crying behind the camera, because her dad started tearing up during the vows. She wrote me a 2-star review for it." I turned to her. "You're kidding." "Nope." Said I made her guests uncomfortable. So I promised myself I'd never show emotion at work again. I studied her profile, the curve of her jaw, the faint smile tugging at her lips. "And how's that working out for you?" She laughed. "Terribly. I cry at every ceremony. I just hide behind a bigger lens. Maybe emotion's not a weakness, I said softly. Maybe it's the thing that makes people trust you. Chloe nodded. Exactly. That's why I wanted you on this project. You don't fake it. I stared out the window, watching the snowflakes melt on the glass. Guess we both have a thing for being too much. Too much for them, she said. Exactly enough for the rest of the world. We stopped for coffee at a small diner off the highway, the kind with handwritten menus and holiday garlands that looked older than us. Sitting by the window, I could see the first blush of the Rockies rising in the distance. It was beautiful in a way that didn't need anyone's approval. When we got back on the road, Chloe's phone buzzed with a call. She put it on speaker. It was Lily, the bride. Hi, Chloe. Just wanted to confirm Claire's still joining you, right? We're so excited. She's right here, Chloe said, smiling. Lily's voice brightened. Claire, we've seen your work online. The way you tell stories, it's exactly what we want. We just want our wedding to feel real. No posing, no pressure. Just love. Something inside me warmed. That sounds perfect, I said. I'll make sure it feels like you. When the call ended, Chloe looked at me. See, the universe has taste. I laughed, shaking my head. Let's hope so. Hours later, the road wound higher, the air thinning into cold crystal. The mountains rose around us, silent and vast. I leaned my head against the window, feeling the vibration of the car beneath me. For once I said quietly, I'm heading somewhere I actually want to be. Chloe smiled. You're not running away anymore, Claire. You're moving towards something. Her words lingered as the first snow started to fall. By the time we reached the edge of Aspen, the sun had dipped below the peaks, painting everything in gold and violet. Chloe pulled into the small lodge parking lot where smoke curled from the chimney and the air smelled like pine. She turned off the engine and looked at me. Ready to make magic? I smiled, my breath fogging the glass. Let's make something real. Outside, the snow crunched beneath our boots as we unloaded the gear. The air was sharp, clean, alive. I looked up at the stars scattered across the darkening sky and thought about my family, about the wine glasses clinking in Napa, the rehearsed toasts, the polished smiles. For the first time, I didn't feel left out. I felt free. And as we walked toward the warm light spilling from the lodge windows, I whispered to myself, let's see what authenticity can really do. At 10 in the morning, my mother was probably sipping champagne under Napa's golden sun, while photographers angled her best side beside Sophia's flawless smile. At 10 in the morning, I was tightening the strap on my camera bag, standing outside Aspen Lodge, my breath visible in the thin mountain air. Snow glittered on the trees like powdered glass. The world around me was silent, except for the distant hum of preparation, soft laughter, footsteps in the snow, the faint sound of acoustic guitar being tuned inside the lodge. Welcome to paradise, Chloe said beside me, snapping a quick picture of the mountain peaks. No pretension, no chaos, no vineyard drama, just love and frostbite. I laughed, watching the vapor of my breath curl upward. Perfect tagline. Inside the lodge glowed with warmth. The scent of cinnamon and pine filled the air. A small fire crackled in the stone hearth and sunlight poured through the tall windows, turning the wood floors to gold. Lily, the bride, stood near the window, in a simple ivory dress, her hair in loose waves. No makeup artist, no stylist, no crowd of assistants. Just her sister and two friends helping her tie a ribbon around her bouquet. She turned when she saw us. You must be Claire, she said, her smile so genuine it startled me. Thank you for helping us share our story. We just want people to see love the way we feel it. I think we can do that, I said. Marcus, the groom, entered a few minutes later carrying mugs of hot chocolate. He kissed Lily's forehead like he'd done it 1,000 times before and said, I can't believe today's actually happening. The way they looked at each other made my chest ache in a way I didn't expect. No performance, no audience. Just two people who knew exactly why they were there. By noon, guests began to arrive, no more than 30 of them. Friends from Colorado, family from Oregon, all bundled in scarves and smiles. Chloe moved through the crowd easily, her camera clicking softly. I caught snippets of conversation, people laughing about how quickly the wedding had come together, about how perfectly unplanned it felt. At 1:30, I stepped outside to scout the ceremony site. The snow-covered clearing behind the lodge had been transformed into something simple and magical. Wooden benches lined a narrow path leading to an arch made of pine branches and string lights. The sound of the nearby creek filled the air like quiet music. I tested angles with my phone, framing the waterfall in the background. Every shot looked cinematic without trying. Nature did the decorating. By the time the ceremony began at 2, the light had softened into that golden hue photographers dream about. Lily's laughter echoed through the air as she walked down the snowy aisle, her boots crunching with each step. Marcus stood waiting, tears already streaking down his cheeks. Instead of a traditional march, an acoustic guitarist played a soft, imperfect version of Can't Help Falling in Love. I felt my throat tighten. Behind my camera, I focused on Lily's face as she reached Marcus. The look between them wasn't polished, it was raw, trembling, alive. When they exchanged vows, the words didn't sound rehearsed. "I promise to keep choosing you," Marcus said, voice breaking. "Even when life gets messy, especially when it does." Lily wiped her tears with her gloved hand and laughed. "And I promise not to correct your singing anymore." The crowd erupted in warm laughter. Something about the imperfection of it all made it beautiful. I found myself blinking hard as I recorded the moment. Across the mountains, 300 miles away, my sister was probably walking down an aisle lined with imported roses, her train carried by attendants, her every movement documented for a magazine spread. Here, snow clung to Lily's hair, and Marcus's breath formed clouds between kisses. It was unscripted and somehow infinitely more real. When the officiant finally said, "You may kiss the bride," the guests cheered, throwing handfuls of pine needles instead of petals. The sound of laughter and camera shutters filled the air. "That's the shot," Chloe whispered beside me. "That's what love looks like." I nodded, my throat thick. As the newlyweds hugged their guests, I sat down on a bench, quickly editing and uploading a few shots for social media. I captioned the first post, "No filters, no sponsors, just two people choosing each other." Within minutes, the photo started gaining likes. Comments appeared instantly. "This feels so real, I can feel their joy through the screen, more of this, less perfection." I posted another video clip, a short reel of Lily adjusting her veil, while Marcus whispered something that made her burst into laughter. I didn't add music or transitions. It didn't need any. "Numbers are climbing already," Chloe said, glancing at her phone. "People love it." I smiled, scrolling through the comments. "This is what weddings should be about. You can't fake happiness like that." Finally, something authentic. For a moment, I forgot about everything else. The family drama, the rejection, the ache of being called too much. I was part of something pure, something that didn't need permission to exist. As dusk settled, the reception began inside the lodge. Candles flickered on long wooden tables and laughter filled the air. Someone started a fire outside, and guests gathered with blankets and mugs of cider. I stepped out for a moment, needing air, and checked my phone. A notification flashed across the screen, Sophia's live video. I almost ignored it, but curiosity won. She was walking into the ballroom, chandeliers dripping gold above her, a sea of people clapping as she entered. My mother followed close behind, beaming their matching smiles, perfect for the cameras. The comment section overflowed with compliments. But I noticed something else too, people tagging the Aspen wedding post I'd uploaded earlier. One comment caught my eye. "This is lovely, but have you seen the other wedding that went viral? Now that's what love looks like." I closed the video before I could think too much about it. Inside, Lily and Marcus were dancing barefoot near the fire. Chloe gestured for me to join them. "Come on, you've earned it." "I don't dance," I said automatically. She grabbed my hand anyway, pulling me into the circle. The music was offbeat, people were laughing, and I realized I hadn't smiled this much in years. At one point, Lily twirled past me and whispered, "You helped make this day unforgettable." I wanted to tell her she had done the same for me. Later, as the crowd began to fade into the night, Chloe and I sat on the lodge steps watching the last embers of the bonfire glow. The sky above us was a blanket of stars. "While your family's posing for photos," Chloe said softly, "you just created something that'll actually mean something tomorrow." I took a slow breath. For the first time, I don't care what they think. She clinked her mug of cider against mine. "To being too much." "And just enough," I said, smiling. We sat there in comfortable silence, our cheeks pink from the cold, watching as new snow began to fall, light, gentle, endless. Back inside, I refreshed my phone one last time. The post had crossed 50,000 views. The comments kept coming, people sharing it, tagging friends, talking about authenticity and love. I set the phone down and let the sound of laughter from inside the lodge fill the quiet. At that exact moment, somewhere in Napa, the lights from Sophia's $1 million reception were probably dazzling. Guests were likely drunk on expensive champagne, smiling for cameras, pretending perfection. But here, in this small mountain lodge, under this quiet sky, something real had happened. For the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to be part of their story. I was writing my own. As I closed my eyes, feeling the warmth from the fire fade into the cold night, one thought drifted through my mind, steady and certain. They had their perfect wedding, and I had the truth. The sound of my phone buzzing pulled me out of sleep before the sun had even climbed above the ridge. At first I thought it was my alarm, but then I noticed the endless stream of notifications lighting up my screen. My heart raced. I sat up, grabbed the phone, and squinted at the flood of messages, tags, and mentions pouring in. Something had happened overnight. Chloe's voice came from the other side of the room. She was already awake, sitting cross-legged on her bed, laptop open, hair messy and eyes wide. "You need to see this." I crossed the room, still half asleep, and looked at her screen. There it was, our posts from the wedding. Thousands of likes, tens of thousands of shares, comments flooding in faster than we could read them. "Oh my God," I whispered. "Is this real?" She turned the screen toward me. "Your video of Lily fixing her veil. It's on every wedding page, every lifestyle account. Look, the wedding that redefines authenticity." That's the headline. I grabbed my phone again and opened Instagram. The notifications wouldn't stop. "This can't be happening," I murmured, scrolling faster. The short clip I'd posted the night before, Lily and Marcus laughing in the snow, had passed 50,000 views. My caption, "No filters, no sponsors, just two people choosing each other," was being quoted in other people's posts. Comments filled the feed. "Finally, something real," I cried, watching this. "This is what love should look like." The world had fallen in love with the wedding I helped tell. I laughed, half in disbelief. "We just posted what we saw. That's it." "Exactly," Chloe said, eyes shining. And it resonated because it was real. People are starving for authenticity. The thrill of it ran through me like electricity. My hands were shaking, adrenaline mixing with something deeper, joy maybe, or validation. For so long I'd been told my emotions were too loud, too inconvenient. But this time, those emotions had built something people couldn't stop watching. As we scrolled, Chloe's phone rang. She answered immediately. "Hello," a familiar voice echoed from the speaker. "Chloe, it's Lily. We just landed in Hawaii and our phones are exploding." "What did you two do?" Chloe put it on speaker. "Nothing, the internet just took over." I leaned closer. "Hey Lily, it's Claire." "Oh, Claire." Lily's laugh sounded like pure sunlight. "Marcus and I were reading the comments on the plane. People are saying our wedding made them believe in love again. We can't thank you enough." Marcus's voice came in faintly behind her. "You helped us tell the truth. That's rare." Lily continued. "We've been talking, and we want to start something, an agency or a community for couples who want real, meaningful celebrations. And well, we want you to run the storytelling side. What do you think?" I blinked. "You're serious?" "Completely." Chloe grinned. Claire, do it. This is your thing. My pulse quickened. I don't know what to say. Lily laughed again. Say yes when you've slept. We'll talk next week. After the call ended, Chloe turned to me. You realize what just happened, right? You went from being uninvited to becoming the voice of authenticity. I smiled faintly. Feels surreal. My phone buzzed again, but this time the caller ID froze me in place. Mom. The thrill in my chest sank into something heavier. I ignored the call, but the next one came seconds later than another. Finally, I sighed and answered. Her voice came sharp, controlled the way it always did when she was about to scold me. Claire, what have you done? I swallowed hard. Good morning to you too. This nonsense online. People are comparing Sophia's wedding to that other one. They're saying it looked fake next to yours. I kept my tone calm. It's not mine, Mom. I was just helping a friend. Well, you've embarrassed your sister. She's devastated. The comments are cruel. Maybe they're not about her, I said quietly. Maybe people are just tired of perfection. That's not the point, she snapped. The family's name is being dragged through the mud. You should delete those posts immediately. I glanced at Chloe, who was pretending not to listen but couldn't hide her smirk. I'm not deleting them. They're about someone else's story, not ours. People are making comparisons, Mom's voice cracked. They're saying the other wedding felt more real. Do you have any idea how humiliating this is? Something in me hardened. Mom, you excluded me because you thought I'd ruin your perfect day. Turns out people liked what I created better. There was a long pause on the other end. I could hear her breathing. This attitude, she said, finally, voice trembling, is exactly why you weren't invited. And this obsession with appearances, I said, is exactly why you'll never understand me. The line went silent. Then she hung up. I set the phone down, exhaling slowly. My hands were still shaking, but not from fear. Chloe looked up. You okay? Better than okay, I said softly. For once I didn't apologize. By noon, we'd packed up and started the drive back down the mountain. My phone kept buzzing the entire way, notifications, interviews, emails. At one rest stop, I opened an email from my boss, Patricia. The subject line read, Incredible work. Inside she'd written, Your approach to storytelling has proven something our industry forgets: authenticity outperforms perfection. Let's discuss a leadership position when you're back. Proud of you. I stared at the screen for a moment, stunned, before showing Chloe. She whooped loud enough to make a man at the next table turn around. Promotion, I told you this was your moment. I laughed, shaking my head. The irony kills me. My family called me too dramatic, and now I'm getting promoted for it. The drive continued, the road winding between walls of pine and snow. My thoughts were loud, tumbling over each other. For years I'd tried to earn my family's approval, to be quiet, reasonable, small. But the world had just handed me proof that being too much wasn't a flaw, it was my gift. When we finally reached the city limits, Chloe pulled into a diner for food. As we waited for our coffee, she asked, You're not gonna call your mom back, are you? I shook my head. Not yet. I think she needs time to sit with what's happened. Chloe smirked. Meanwhile, the internet's sitting with you. You're trending, you know. I groaned. Don't tell me that. It's true. #RealLoveAspen just hit 100,000 posts. I scrolled through a few of them, watching strangers share the photos we'd taken, their captions filled with hope. Finally, love, without filters. Proof that weddings don't need to be perfect to be beautiful. Something inside me softened. I hadn't meant to start a movement. I just wanted to tell the truth. That night, back home in Seattle, I sat by the window, the city lights blinking below. My phone buzzed with another notification, Sophia's name this time. I hesitated, then answered. Claire, her voice was quiet, shaky. I'm here, I said. Your posts, they're everywhere. People keep tagging me. They're saying my wedding looked fake compared to that one. Did you mean to do that? Her words were heavy with hurt, not accusation. No, I said softly. It wasn't about you, Sophia. It just happened. I didn't even think about how it would look, she said, voice trembling. I just wanted it to be perfect. And now people are laughing at it. Maybe they're not laughing, I said. Maybe they're realizing they don't have to live up to impossible standards. There was silence for a long time. Then she whispered, I didn't invite you because Mom said you'd make things difficult. But maybe we made it difficult by pretending everything was fine. I felt tears sting my eyes. You didn't have to pretend with me, Sophia. I know, she said, and her voice cracked. I'm sorry. We stayed quiet for a while, listening to each other breathe across the line. Before we hung up, I said, don't let them make you feel ashamed. Everyone just wants something real. That's what this whole thing is about. Her voice was small but sincere. Maybe someday you can help me find that too. After we said goodbye, I stared out the window again, watching the rain trail down the glass. My reflection looked different, calmer, grounded. I wasn't the girl begging for acceptance anymore. The next morning, an email from a television producer appeared in my inbox. We'd love to feature you on a lifestyle segment about authentic storytelling. Let us know your availability. I smiled. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like the family disappointment. I felt like someone the world was finally seeing clearly. I took a deep breath and whispered to the quiet room. Sometimes truth doesn't need revenge. It just needs to be seen. By noon the next day, my phone had already rung 12 times. My mother, Aunt Diane. A number labeled unknown that I knew belonged to Sophia. I hadn't answered any of them. The headlines were everywhere. The wedding that redefined authenticity. Aspen's ceremony outshines Napa's luxury celebration. My name wasn't in the titles, but the people who mattered most already knew, who had posted the videos that started it all. I sat in my small apartment, coffee going cold beside me, watching the news anchor on TV gesture toward two split-screen images, Sophia's glossy wedding photos on the left and Lily and Marcus's snowy ceremony on the right. Which celebration felt more genuine, she asked the panel. The luxury or the love? My stomach turned. Chloe texted from her studio. We're trending nationally. Can you believe this? I didn't answer right away, because while the rest of the world was celebrating, my family was imploding. The first call I finally answered was my mother's. Claire, she said before I could even speak. You have no idea what you've done. Hi, Mom, I said evenly, standing by the window. I was starting to wonder when you'd call. Don't take that tone with me. Your sister is in tears. The family is humiliated. Reporters are calling. People are asking questions. What were you thinking posting those videos? I was doing my job, I said simply. The couple wanted authentic coverage. People connected with it. You could have waited. You could have given Sophia her moment before you stole it. I didn't steal anything. I created something beautiful. Their wedding went viral because it was real. You've embarrassed us, she snapped. You've embarrassed this family. Everyone's comparing us to them. Maybe they should, I said, the words sharper than I intended. Maybe the problem isn't that people saw something genuine. Maybe the problem is that they're realizing how fake everything else has been. There was silence on the line. Then her voice softened, cold, careful. Claire, you always twist things to make yourself look like the victim. No, I said quietly. I just stopped letting you write my story for me. The line went dead. I stood there, phone still in my hand, breathing hard. I should have felt guilty. Instead, I felt lighter. 5 minutes later, Sophia called. I almost didn't answer, but something told me to. Her voice was shaky. I can't even go online without seeing it. Everyone's sharing your wedding posts. It wasn't my wedding, I said gently. You know what I mean, she said, her voice cracking. They're comparing us. They're saying your content, whatever you did, felt more real than mine. I hesitated. Sophia, it's not a competition. Everything feels like one now, she said. Do you know how it feels to spend months planning something perfect only to wake up and have the world say it meant nothing? I closed my eyes. Yeah, I said softly. I do. Her breath hitched on the other end. You're enjoying this, aren't you? No, I said. But I'm not apologizing for finally being seen. There was a pause. You're still dramatic, Claire. Even your revenge had to be poetic. I almost laughed. It's not revenge, Sophia. It's perspective. She exhaled, and then the line went quiet. By the time the call ended, I felt drained. I sank onto the couch, scrolling through the endless comments online. This is what weddings should look like. The Mitchell family wedding was pretty but soulless. Money can't buy authenticity. Each one was a dagger and a bomb all at once. Then Aunt Diane called. I almost ignored it, but answered out of some masochistic instinct. "Sweetheart," she began, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "I think we can all agree things have gotten a bit out of hand. Maybe it would be best to take down your posts for a few days, let things calm down." "Why?" I asked. "Well," she hesitated, "because your sister's having a hard time, and your mother's phone hasn't stopped ringing. People are gossiping. It's unnecessary attention." "Truth isn't unnecessary," I said. "It's just inconvenient." Diane sighed. "You've always been like this. You just can't let things go." "I let a lot go," I said. "That's the problem." Her voice hardened. "If you really loved your family, you'd fix this." I smiled faintly. "Maybe loving them means not lying for them anymore." She hung up without another word. By late afternoon, my apartment felt too quiet. I grabbed my coat and went to Chloe's studio downtown. She was sitting on the floor surrounded by gear, her phone buzzing nonstop. "I was just about to come to you," she said. "You okay?" I shrugged. "Depends on how you define okay." She patted the floor beside her. "Come sit." I sank down, exhaustion settling into my bones. "I talked to my mom," I said. "And Sophia?" "Let me guess," she said. "They think you ruined their image. They think I embarrassed them." Chloe handed me a cup of coffee. "No, you revealed them. There's a difference." "I didn't mean for this to turn into a war," I said softly. "I just wanted to share something beautiful." She leaned back against the wall. "The truth has a funny way of making people uncomfortable, especially the ones who've built their lives around pretending." Her words sat heavy between us. I took a sip of coffee. "You think I should respond?" Chloe shook her head. "No. Let the work speak for itself." We spent the next hour scrolling through emails together, offers from magazines, interviews, sponsorships. Even Patricia, my boss, had sent another message asking for a meeting to discuss expanding the creative team. At one point, Chloe looked at me and said, "You realize you did it right. You turned what they called too much into success." I smiled faintly. Feels strange, doesn't it, winning without trying? By the time I got home that evening, the sky had turned violet, and the city lights shimmered through the drizzle. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a voicemail from my mother. I hesitated before pressing play. Her voice was tired, shaky. "You've created a mess, Claire. I hope you're proud. Your sister can't even enjoy her honeymoon without reporters calling. We just wanted peace. Why do you always have to ruin things?" I deleted the message halfway through and whispered, because I stopped pretending peace was the same thing as silence. I went to the balcony, letting the cold air bite my cheeks. My phone buzzed again, another message notification. This one wasn't from family. It was from a television producer. "Hi Claire, I'm with Morning Light Network. We'd love to invite you for a segment about authentic weddings and your viral storytelling. Please let us know if you're interested." I read it twice. A week ago I was invisible. Now the world wanted to hear what I had to say. The irony made me laugh quietly at first, then louder, until my throat ached. Inside, I sat on the couch, opened my laptop, and began drafting a response. "Yes, I'd love to join the discussion. Thank you for reaching out." When I hit send, I stared at my reflection in the dark screen. My face looked calmer, sharper, more certain. This wasn't revenge anymore. It was reclamation. Later that night, I stood at the window watching the lights of the city flicker below. My family's world was unraveling in real time, all because I'd shared a story about love that didn't need money or control to matter. For years, they'd called me dramatic for caring too much. But maybe the truth was that they'd never cared enough. I turned off my phone, letting the quiet settle around me. For once, it didn't feel lonely. It felt peaceful, earned. The world was finally listening, and for the first time, I wasn't afraid to let them hear my voice. By the next morning, my name was everywhere. I hadn't even agreed to an interview yet, but that didn't stop the internet from making me a story. Hashtags like #RealLoveAspen and #Authenticity over Aesthetics were trending across multiple platforms. Every wedding blog, influencer, and talk show seemed to have an opinion. I sat at my kitchen table staring at my phone as notifications kept flashing across the screen, messages from journalists, followers, even former clients. The numbers didn't make sense. A video I had posted 3 days ago had reached over 3 million views. Chloe called before I could process it. "You're not going to believe this," she said breathlessly. BuzzFeed just published an article, "Meet the woman behind the viral wedding that changed everything." "They're talking about you." I covered my face with my hands. "Oh my God. This is good, Claire. Like career making good. Or family ending bad," I muttered. She paused. "You think they'll actually talk to the press?" I gave a humorless laugh. "If they do, it'll be to deny I'm related to them." Chloe sighed through the line. "You can't control their reaction, but you can decide what you do next." The producer from Morning Light Show emailed me again. "They want you and the couple to come on this week. This is your moment." I hesitated. "I don't want to make it worse for Sophia." "Claire, the story isn't about her anymore," she said firmly. "It's about what you've created." I looked around my small apartment, half coffee mug, half camera gear. "It doesn't feel like creation. It feels like exposure." Chloe's voice softened. "Sometimes truth shines brighter than you expect. You can't blame yourself for its light." That night, I turned on the TV just in time to see Sophia's wedding appear on a lifestyle news segment. The anchor smiled too brightly as she introduced the story. 2 weddings, 1 weekend, and a viral debate. Which celebration defines modern love? My chest tightened. The screen filled with images, Sophia's grand ballroom glowing in gold, guests raising crystal glasses, my mother in designer lace. Then the video cut to a clip from Aspen Lily and Marcus kissing in the snow, laughing through tears. The contrast was brutal. A commentator smiled at the camera. "Viewers overwhelmingly say the Aspen wedding felt real compared to the Napa event. People are craving honesty." I muted the TV and leaned back, my heart pounding. It wasn't satisfaction I felt. It was dread. My phone buzzed again. A text from my mother: "This has gone too far. Call me immediately." I didn't. Instead, I opened the comments under the latest article. Half were supportive. "Finally a wedding that means something. Claire Mitchell deserves credit for this movement." But the other half were ugly. "She used her family's wedding to get famous. Publicity stunt. Jealous sister energy." I shut the app. By noon the next day, I had another missed call, this time from Sophia. When I didn't answer, she left a voicemail. "Claire, please stop this. People are harassing us. Reporters are calling Ethan's office. I can't even look at my wedding photos anymore without seeing comments comparing them to yours. I just wanted one day that was mine." Her voice cracked near the end. I replayed the message 3 times. Later, when Chloe dropped by with takeout, I played it for her. Chloe sighed. "That's rough. She sounds broken," I said quietly. "I didn't mean to destroy her big day." "You didn't," Chloe said firmly. "You didn't destroy anything. You just showed people something better. I wasn't trying to be better. I just wanted to feel something real for once." Chloe reached across the table and touched my hand. "And you did. The rest of the world just happened to feel it with you." We ate in silence after that, the smell of sesame noodles filling the room. When Chloe left, I sat by the window watching the city glow beneath the drizzle. Somewhere in that same moment, my mother was probably pouring herself a glass of wine and talking about reputation. That night, the producer from Morning Light Show called. Her voice was upbeat, professional. "Claire, we're planning a segment on how authenticity is reshaping modern storytelling. We'd love to have you and the Aspen couple appear together." My hand trembled slightly as I held the phone. Will it focus on me? On your work, she said gently. On what you've inspired. I think people are craving that right now. I closed my eyes. Okay, I'll do it. When I hung up, my phone buzzed again this time. It was an article notification. Family faces fallout as viral wedding overshadows Napa celebration. The photo beneath the headline showed my sister's strained smile beside my mother's frozen expression. The words felt like a punch. I paced the apartment, the sound of rain against the window, loud in my ears. I wanted to call Sophia to tell her that none of this was intentional, that I hadn't meant for our worlds to collide. But deep down, I knew it wouldn't matter. The damage was already done. That weekend, I met with Chloe to prepare for the show. She was all energy, pulling out outfits, testing microphones, scribbling notes. "This is your narrative now," she said. "Don't let anyone twist it." I nodded, though my stomach churned. "I just don't want to sound like I'm bragging, or like I'm attacking my family." "Then don't," she said simply. "Speak from the truth. It's what got you here." By Sunday morning, the storm had only grown. News outlets were running comparisons, even poll questions. Authenticity or extravagance? What do you value more? The comment sections read like war zones. I spent the day trying not to look, but it was impossible to ignore the ping of every new tag. The number Real Love Aspen had crossed 500,000 mentions. That evening, my mother finally texted again. "This has gone too far. You've embarrassed your sister. You've embarrassed me. Take the interviews down or don't bother coming home for Christmas." I read it 3 times, then typed back, "I wasn't invited to Christmas last year. Remember." Her response came instantly, "Don't be cruel." I stared at the message until the words blurred. Then I turned the phone off completely. When night fell, I lit a candle on my kitchen counter and opened my journal. I hadn't written in weeks. The first line came easily. "They built a world of mirrors, and I finally found the courage to look away." I kept writing, spilling every thought that had tangled inside me. About how I wasn't angry anymore, just tired. About how freedom sometimes looked like chaos. And about how for the first time I didn't feel invisible. Around midnight, Chloe called. "You ready for tomorrow?" I hesitated. What if they twist it? What if I just become the jealous sister headline? "Then you remind them why you're here," she said. "You tell the truth. You don't apologize for it." The next morning, I woke before dawn. Seattle was quiet, wrapped in fog. I brewed coffee and watched the light slowly crawl through the blinds. My nerves hummed, but beneath them was something steadier, resolve. I opened my email to find confirmation from the producer. Segment confirmed. You, Chloe, and the couple will appear on Tuesday. Congratulations, Claire. As I stared at the message, my reflection caught in the dark laptop screen. I hardly recognized the woman, looking back, her shoulders straighter, her eyes clear. I thought of Sophia, of Mom, of every time I'd been told I was too emotional, too impulsive, too much. Maybe being too much was exactly what the world needed. I smiled to myself, closing the laptop. For once, I wasn't afraid of being seen. I was ready to speak. They told me not to be dramatic, and yet somehow I was walking into a television studio. The air inside Morning Light Show buzzed with nervous energy, camera crews adjusting lenses, producers whispering into headsets, assistants darting back and forth with clipboards and coffee cups. I followed the young production assistant through a maze of bright lights and cables until we reached the green room. 5 minutes till you're on, she said with a professional smile. You'll be sitting between Lily and Marcus. The host will guide you through the main talking points, but just speak from the heart. That part I could do. Chloe was already waiting inside, pacing near the mirror with a nervous grin. Okay, I know you're calm, but I'm freaking out a little. Are you ready for this? I smoothed my blazer, pretending my hands weren't trembling. Ready enough. You're not just a guest, Claire, she said. You're the guest. The viral storyteller who made the whole world talk about authenticity. You realize that, right? Don't remind me, I muttered, but I smiled anyway. Through the half-open door, I could see the stage beyond the curtains, bright lights, a cheerful set painted in yellows and whites, the Morning Light logo spinning gently on the screen. It was all so polished, so controlled, the exact opposite of the messy, emotional truth that had brought me here. As I waited, I thought about the text I hadn't answered that morning. Mom had written, "If you go through with this, don't expect to be part of this family again." I had stared at it for a long time before locking my phone. I'd spent years chasing her approval. I wasn't about to stop telling the truth now, just because it made her uncomfortable. A sound engineer clipped a small microphone to my lapel. 2 minutes, he said. Chloe gave my arm a squeeze. Remember who you are. You don't need to perform. Just be. I nodded, inhaled deeply, and stepped toward the stage lights when the producer waved me forward. The host, Maria Santos, greeted us with that perfect TV smile, warm enough to look sincere, sharp enough to command attention. We're here today with Claire Mitchell, the social media strategist, whose coverage of an intimate Aspen wedding went viral, sparking a nationwide conversation about authenticity and love. The applause was gentle, curious. Maria turned toward me. Claire, take us back to that weekend. You were excluded from your own sister's wedding, and instead you ended up documenting someone else's. How did that happen? I took a slow breath, steadying my voice. Honestly, it wasn't planned. A friend of mine, Chloe, was hired to photograph a last-minute wedding. I went to help with social media coverage. I had no idea it would turn into something this big. Maria smiled. And what made your work stand out? I hesitated. I think people are exhausted by perfection. We live in a world where everything is staged, every photo, every caption, every moment. But that wedding, it was raw. They weren't trying to impress anyone. They were just in love. The audience hummed in agreement. Maria leaned forward. It's interesting that your own family celebration happened the same weekend, a very different kind of wedding. Very luxurious, very curated. People couldn't help but compare. I felt the tension ripple through the room but kept my tone even. They were both beautiful in their own ways. But beauty doesn't always mean connection. Sometimes the simplest moments hold the most truth. Behind me, a large screen lit up with clips from Lily and Marcus's ceremony. Snow, laughter, vows said through tears. The crowd let out a collective awe. Maria smiled knowingly. These images have touched millions. What do you think people are responding to emotion? I said simply. We all recognize it when we see it. You can fake a smile for a photo, but you can't fake love. The audience applauded. Maria gestured to the analytics displayed on the screen beside us, graphs showing the viral spike, the engagement metrics. You've become the face of authentic storytelling online. But I imagine this success hasn't been without personal cost. I nodded slowly. My family wasn't thrilled about the attention. They felt overshadowed. And I get it, no one wants their big day compared to something else. But I think what happened just revealed something deeper. People crave honesty, not spectacle. Maria tilted her head. You've spoken about your family before. Have they reached out? I took a breath. They've had strong opinions. A ripple of laughter moved through the audience. But I've realized that sometimes telling the truth upsets the people who benefit from silence. And I'm okay with that now. Maria smiled softly. That's powerful. Behind the cameras I noticed Chloe watching from the wings, tears in her eyes. She mouthed, "You're doing amazing." The host continued, "Claire, you've been praised for turning pain into purpose. But I have to ask, do you forgive them? Your family." The studio went silent. I felt every eye on me. I paused long enough to gather the words. Forgiveness isn't saying what they did was okay. It's saying I won't let it define me anymore. I still love them. But love doesn't mean accepting someone else's version of you. Sometimes it means letting them see who you really are, even if it scares them. A few people in the audience started clapping, and soon it spread. I smiled, the weight in my chest easing for the first time in weeks. Maria nodded. That's something a lot of people need to hear. Before we wrap, what would you say to others who feel excluded or silenced by their own families? I thought for a moment. That being too much doesn't mean you're wrong. It means you have more to give than they're willing to receive. Keep giving anyway. The applause this time was louder, warmer. When the cameras cut to commercial, Maria leaned over and whispered, "That was one of the most honest interviews we've had in years. Thank you for sharing yourself." As I walked off the stage, my hands were still shaking, but for once it wasn't from fear. It was adrenaline, pride, freedom, all tangled together. Chloe met me backstage and wrapped me in a hug. "You killed it," she said into my shoulder. "That was everything." I laughed, half crying. "I didn't say anything I didn't mean." "Exactly," she said, wiping her eyes. "That's why it worked." As we gathered our things, a producer rushed over holding her phone. "You're trending again. The clip of your quote about forgiveness, it's everywhere." I blinked. Already, she said with a grin. "You might want to check your messages." When we finally left the building, the sun hit my face like a spotlight. The sky over Los Angeles was too bright, too perfect, but I didn't mind. Chloe looped her arm through mine as we walked toward the car. "You just changed the conversation," she said. I smiled. Maybe I just reminded people what it sounds like to tell the truth. As we drove away from the studio, my phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. "It's Sophia." I watched the interview. "Can we talk?" My breath caught. I stared at the message for a long moment, the world outside blurring past the car window. "Everything okay?" Chloe asked. I nodded slowly. "Yeah, I think it finally might be." I didn't reply right away. I just looked out at the endless stretch of highway and whispered more to myself than to anyone else. They called me dramatic. But maybe honesty was always the most dramatic thing I could do. As the city disappeared behind us, I felt lighter than I had in years. For once the world had seen me exactly as I was, and instead of rejecting it, it applauded. And that was all the validation I would ever need. After the interview aired, my phone went quiet for the first time in weeks. No reporters, no comments, no noise, just silence, the kind that felt like change. The clip had gone viral overnight, but not in the chaotic, messy way I feared. People weren't arguing anymore. They were reflecting. My words about forgiveness were being shared alongside captions like, "This is what grace looks like, and the real revenge is peace." For the first time, the world wasn't dissecting my pain, they were learning from it. That morning, the city outside my window looked washed clean by rain. I sat cross-legged on my couch with a mug of coffee and scrolled through the comments. She spoke with so much composure. You can feel her heart in every word. Her story makes me want to call my sister. I didn't realize I was crying until a tear hit my wrist. Not out of sadness, out of release. Then a knock at the door. When I opened it, my mother was standing there holding a bouquet of white tulips. Her hair was pulled back neatly, her face bare of makeup. She looked smaller than I remembered. "Hi," she said softly. "May I come in?" I stepped aside, too stunned to speak. She set the flowers on my kitchen counter and looked around as if trying to understand the life she'd never been invited into. "I watched your interview," she said finally. "I figured," I replied. She nodded, wringing her hands. "You were composed. Honest. I recognized you in those words." I couldn't help a small laugh. "That's new." Her eyes glistened, but she didn't flinch. I deserve that. We stood there in silence for a moment, two people who had spent years talking past each other. "I came here," she said carefully, "because I realized something after seeing you speak. You weren't being dramatic all those times I called you that. You were being passionate. You cared more than the rest of us did." My chest tightened. I told myself I was protecting the family's image, she continued. But really, I was protecting myself from discomfort, from judgment. "I thought if we looked perfect, we'd be safe." "And were you?" I asked quietly. Her voice cracked. "No." I motioned for her to sit. She took the edge of the couch like she wasn't sure she was allowed. "You were right about us," she said. "About me. I didn't see what I was teaching my daughters. I taught you both that love was a performance, that emotion should be hidden, that peace was silence." I felt tears building again, but this time I didn't fight them. "Mom," I said softly, "I wasn't trying to destroy anything. I just wanted to stop pretending." "I know," she said. "And I'm sorry for not listening sooner." It wasn't a grand apology. It didn't erase years of hurt. But it was real, and that was enough. She looked down at her hands. "I spoke to Sophia last night. She told me she's been thinking about you a lot. About the things you said on the show." "She did," my mother nodded. "She wants to talk to you. I think she's ready to understand." I wasn't sure what to feel, relief, fear, or both. "We'll see," I murmured. We talked for another hour, not about blame or guilt, but about small things, recipes, the rain, my work. Ordinary things we'd never been able to share before. It was almost awkward, but beautifully so. Like learning a new language that had always been inside us. When she stood to leave, she hesitated by the door. "You know," she said, "the tulips mean forgiveness." I smiled. "Then I'll take care of them." After she left, the apartment felt lighter, like she'd taken a piece of old tension with her. I placed the flowers in a vase and whispered, "I forgive you too." That evening, as I was cleaning up, my phone buzzed. Incoming video call, Sophia. My pulse quickened. I almost let it go to voicemail, but then I swiped to answer. Sophia's face appeared on the screen. Her makeup was gone, her hair pulled back. She looked tired but softer somehow, as if the weight of pretending had finally fallen away. "Hey," she said quietly. "Hey." A beat of silence stretched between us. "I saw Mom this morning," I said. She nodded. "She told me." "I'm glad she did. I think she needed it as much as we do." "Probably," she exhaled. I wanted to say something I should have said months ago. "I'm sorry, Claire. I didn't speak." "I was jealous," she admitted. "Not because of what you did, but because you can be real. I've spent my whole life trying to make everything look perfect, and it never felt enough. Then I saw that video of you talking about authenticity, and I realized you've been living what I've been pretending." Her honesty pierced me in the best possible way. "I never wanted to compete with you," I said. "I know," she said, "but I made it one anyway. I was so focused on keeping everyone happy that I lost myself. And when the world started comparing our weddings, it wasn't your success that hurt me. It was seeing the difference between genuine joy and performance." Her voice wavered. "You looked free, and I wanted that." My throat tightened. "It wasn't easy to get there." "I didn't think it was," she said. "That's why I called. I want to do something different with you." "Different?" Sophia smiled faintly. "Daniel and I are planning a renewal ceremony. Small, just family and close friends. No magazine photographers, no designer sponsors, no pretense. And I want you to help tell the story." I blinked. "You want me to document it, I want you to shape it," she said. "You understand what matters now. I want people to see love for what it really is." I felt tears rising again, but this time they came with laughter. "You really mean that?" "I do," she said, smiling through her own tears. "I want to get it right this time. I want it to be about the people, not the picture." I nodded slowly. "Then let's make it real." We talked for an hour after that, longer than we had in years. The kind of conversation where every word felt like rebuilding a bridge, plank by plank. By the time we said goodbye, I felt something I hadn't felt since childhood, a quiet sense of belonging. Later that night, I opened my journal and wrote, "Sometimes the people who hurt you most are the ones most capable of healing when you finally let them see the truth." A few days later, an email arrived from Sophia. Subject line: Renewal Ceremony, May 15, Portland. Attached were photos of a backyard strung with fairy lights and handwritten notes about her vision, simple, honest, human. She ended the email with one line that made my heart ache in the best way. "I finally understand what you meant about love, not needing to look perfect. It just needs to feel true." I stared at those words for a long time. That night, I stood by the window as the city lights shimmered in the distance. Somewhere out there, my family was learning to speak the language of authenticity, the same one I'd been punished for using. The thought made me smile. I picked up the tulips now blooming fully in the vase and whispered to the quiet room, revenge was never the point. Healing was. For the first time in years, it felt like home wasn't a place or a family name, it was peace. It didn't look like a wedding from a magazine. And that was exactly what made it beautiful. The sun was gentle that morning in Portland, soft light spilling over the backyard that Sophia and Daniel had turned into something quietly magical. String lights were draped between trees, wildflowers bloomed in mason jars, and a small wooden table held a plate of cookies instead of a towering cake. I stood at the gate for a moment, taking it in the laughter, the smell of cinnamon and grass, the hum of people who were there not to be seen, but to belong. Sophia spotted me first. Claire, she called, waving. Her voice carried that same warmth she'd used as a child when she wanted me to follow her outside to play. This time it wasn't an act. She ran up and wrapped her arms around me before I could say a word. "You made it," she said against my shoulder. I smiled. I wouldn't miss it for the world. She pulled back and I almost didn't recognize her. No designer gown, no professional makeup, just a simple cream dress and bare feet. She looked radiant in a way that had nothing to do with money or perfection. "You helped me see this," she said quietly. "That love doesn't have to be a performance." I laughed softly. I think we both learned that lesson the hard way. Daniel joined us, wiping his hands on a dish towel. "Hey, superstar," he said to me, grinning. "The famous storyteller herself." "Please don't start," I groaned. "I'm just here to work the camera." "You're here as family," Sophia corrected, looping her arm through mine. "And maybe a little as the storyteller." I couldn't argue with that. The guests began arriving soon after, only 20 of them close friends and family. Chloe was there too, balancing her camera in one hand and a coffee in the other. "This feels different," she whispered. "Like we're not documenting anything, just witnessing it." "That's the goal," I said, focusing my lens on Sophia and Daniel as they greeted people. No posing. Just life happening. The ceremony started just before sunset. Sophia and Daniel stood beneath a simple arch made of branches, sunlight flickering through the leaves. The air smelled like lilacs and fresh bread from the kitchen. When Daniel began his vows, his voice trembled. "I used to think love was about building the perfect life," he said. "But I realized it's about building the honest one." Sophia wiped her eyes, smiling through her tears. "And I used to think happiness was something you had to prove. But it's really just something you live." The crowd clapped softly, a few sniffles breaking through. Even my mother, sitting in the second row, dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief. When they exchanged rings, the world seemed to hold its breath. There were no drones overhead, no photographers shouting for better light, just laughter, wind, and the quiet sound of two people choosing each other again. Afterward, while guests mingled, I stood by the table editing a few clips for Sophia's keepsake video. My mother approached, her footsteps slow and deliberate. "It was lovely," she said, her voice gentle. "Simple, but lovely." I looked up at her. "That's the point." She nodded, folding her hands. "You were right, Claire. All this time I was chasing appearances when what I really wanted was connection." She hesitated, her eyes glistening. "I'm sorry for the way I treated you, for calling you too much when all you were was honest." I felt my throat tighten. "You were doing what you thought was best. And you," she said softly, "were doing what was true. I see that now." For a moment the air between us felt still, like years of misunderstanding were finally being exhaled. Sophia joined us, slipping her arm around Mom's shoulders. "You know," she said with a shaky laugh, "if you two start crying, I'm going to have to join in." We all laughed, and for the first time in years it felt natural. It felt like family. Later, as night fell, fairy lights twinkled above the backyard. Guests clinked glasses and passed plates of homemade food. Chloe played a quiet song on her phone, and a few people started dancing on the grass. I sat off to the side camera in my lap, just watching. Sophia and Daniel swayed under the lights, her head on his shoulder. Mom sat with a glass of wine, smiling at them, not with pride, but with peace. Chloe plopped down beside me, kicking off her shoes. "You realize this is your story coming full circle, right?" I tilted my head. "How so?" She gestured toward the dancing crowd. "You went from being uninvited to being the one who reminded them what celebration should feel like. You turned pain into perspective." I smiled. "Guess life has a sense of humor," she grinned. "A poetic one." For a while we just sat in silence, listening to laughter mingle with the hum of crickets. Then Mom walked over and took the empty chair beside me. She didn't say anything at first. She didn't need to. Finally she looked at me and said, "You were never too much, Claire. You were just ahead of us." The words landed softly like the closing note of a song I'd waited my whole life to hear. I smiled through tears. "Then I'll slow down a bit. Give you time to catch up." She laughed, touching my hand. "Deal." As the night deepened, I lifted my camera again, but this time I didn't record. I just watched. The glow of the lights, the laughter, the soft rhythm of footsteps on grass. It wasn't a perfect ending, but maybe perfect wasn't the point. It was real. Before leaving, Sophia hugged me again. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything, for showing me what real looks like. Just promise me one thing," I said. "Don't stop being honest even when it's messy." She nodded. "I won't." Driving home that night, the world outside my window blurred into soft colors: gold, silver, blue. My heart felt quiet in a way it hadn't in years. At a red light, I glanced at my reflection in the car window. I looked the same, but everything inside me had shifted. I wasn't the dramatic one anymore. I was the one who stayed true when everyone else played pretend. Maybe that was the story all along, not revenge, but redemption. Not proving them wrong, but proving myself right. When I got home, I poured a glass of wine, sat by the window, and opened my journal one last time. I wrote, "They excluded me from perfection, so I found peace instead. They called me too much, but maybe the world needed more truth." Then I closed the book smiling. Because endings don't always come with applause. Sometimes they come with quiet understanding. Sometimes peace is the loudest victory of all. If you've ever been made to feel like you didn't belong, or that your truth was too heavy for others to carry, remember this: the people who can't handle your honesty were never meant to define your worth. And if this story reminded you of someone you love, or someone you've finally forgiven, share it. Leave a comment below. Tell me what real means to you, because stories only matter when they're shared. Stay a while. Subscribe for more stories like this about love, family, forgiveness, and the courage to be real. After all, the ending wasn't perfect, but it was true.